One. Okay. Hello, Professor Goldberg. Good afternoon. So today I'd like to be talking with you about the Joe Rogan controversy story. As you might know, he's been getting a lot of backlash for so-called misinformation about COVID from various guests he's had on. And my first question is, sorry, let me pull up my. So my first question is, what are your overall thoughts about the controversy?
In general?
Yeah.
I think people have a responsibility to put out stuff that they think is true, if possible. The controversy was based upon comments and actually sort of built up after a year of sort of other guests of comments that have been proven pretty much not to be true. And so there, you can debate, and people are going to latch onto the one study he latched onto and said, look at this, but the study didn't say sort of what the guest said. Guests have already been rejected from Twitter. So there's a responsibility by him to make a choice. And he chose to have the person on, and then there's a choice by should he but put a disclaimer on saying these are types of comments. I actually have not seen the entire clip, I don't listen. I haven't seen it, but he did, and I think there's a responsibility all the way down the line of the platform provider, the host, and the listener to decide what they want to hear, what they don't want to hear, and how they want to interpret it. But part of that includes having rules. Spotify has rules. They now reaffirm their rules. Rogan said, yeah. But when you're doing, so there's a responsibility. When you're mass communicating, you have a responsibility. And you can use that responsibility great all the time, up and down, or poorly. And that's just the way human beings are. So that's kind of a not general overall view, but people got to take responsibility. All people.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with you, especially in mass communications where you're communicating to a variety of people and you want to try to get your message across, and what you say is very important. And
I'm not exactly sure he's trying to get a message across. I mean, Rogan is Rogan. He's the number one for a reason, but he's also number one because that gets advertisers and money. I mean, we all know the motivation behind it. So the message is sort of irrelevant sometimes because what you want to get is eyeballs and ears on your podcast. Now, that's not the only motivating factor. People have multiple things, but to stay number one, the pressure's on, and he's got to do what he has to do to stay number one.
Absolutely. And like you said, there is that responsibility of being able to communicate yourself properly. And if you do mess up on, getting a fact wrong or misinterpreting something, you just simply try to correct it and try to, rectify the mistake.
It's all you can do.
Exactly.
And also, in some ways, the process did about as good as it could. Okay. He put on somebody probably shouldn't have put on from the point of view of being someone who should be speaking about a global pandemic in a reasonable scientific fashion. But he did. And the listeners are allowed to respond. The other people on that platform or artists are allowed to respond, and the platform itself is allowed to respond. And all those things happened. Okay, the artist said, we're gonna do something about it. We want to protest, and then we're gonna take our stuff off the platform. And the platform says, you're kind of right. Let's make sure we have our policies in order. And the listeners can go, we back Joe Rogan, or they go down in numbers, they go up in numbers. So in some ways, the system did what the best it could in this situation.
Absolutely. And I know I read an article saying that Spotify they didn't directly respond to Joe Rogan's part in it, but
Correct.
they did say that they would put like a warning label for any like discussion of COVID-19 for future podcasts.
Yes, they reiterated and which is impossible, of course. They have millions and millions and millions of minutes going on their platform all the time. They they can't, so what, they can't police everything. In fact, probably very small. But when you got the biggies, maybe you pick your top 10 or top 20 and you say, let's pay attention to those. They have to have some level, or like in many cases when it comes down to corporations who are just trying to get through a crisis, they do this and then it's forgotten like any news cycle in a week or two. And if you go to the news now, who's here? Who's talk? How many news stories are there about Rogan? I mean, there's a couple because it's still we're in the aftermath because the artists are still jumping behind Neil Young and crowd, so that keeps a story in the press. But after that, it'll flare out, and no one's going to think about it until the next
Absolutely.
time. And then the same thing will happen, like any news site.
Absolutely. So
You know,
going actually speaking of Neil Young, because I know him and Joni Mitchell and who else was it?
a lot of
Mary
Springsteen and yeah,
Mary
a lot of
Trump,
yeah,
I
Mary.
know. Um, do they have a right to remove their catalog of music?
Absolutely. Why wouldn't they? It's their music. They can decide what platforms they want to put it out on. It's they're taking their responsible step to protest or make their voice known or highlight what they disagree with. And what they're doing is they're taking their stuff down so it makes news, and it may formulate change, which sort of forced Spotify to do whatever little it did, but it did, it did respond. I don't think it planned on it. Um, so absolutely, sure. If you want, there's plenty of outlets, as we know, and the artists own their music. They normally the artists can control the outlets of their music depending upon their own contractual obligations and the like.
But do you think the removal of like in their entire catalog from streaming services, do you think that's stepping a little bit over the edge if for something?
No, no, they can respond. Some people protest, some people write letters, some people give money. It's their platform. They don't want to support with their money the platform that provides this kind of information. It's like people deleting Facebook. You don't need to be on Facebook. You don't need to be on Twitter. You don't need to be on Snapchat. You don't need to be on TikTok. That's your choice. You don't need to put your content up there. And if you do something content, you delete it, right? So they decide to delete themselves from Spotify because they don't agree with the platform. It's private industry. They can afford it. The small guys aren't going to do that because this is their outlet. But when you're a
Yeah,
big name, but they're trying to generate the I'll use the word controversy. They're trying to create awareness of what they disagree with, what's happening between misinformation and Spotify through Joe Rogan, and they absolutely have the right to do anything they want with that.
absolutely. Let me see. So were you able to see, were you able to catch a glimpse of Rogan's response? Because I know it was like a
Yeah,
9-minute video.
I saw
What
part of
did,
it. His outdoor video. Yeah.
yeah, what did you think of that?
Um. Well, let's see. He pretty much said, from one of the clips I saw, what he should say. I need to have, if I'm going to have one kind of guest, I need to have another kind of guest to balance it out. Fine. I mean, that's point counterpoint. And once again, he's free to have those guests, and people are free to listen to point counterpoint, or they can say, I don't look at the guy. They can turn it off. If he's trying to be more responsive and responsible by having other counterpoints, which, by the way, which would go on every kind of issue he presents. What else? What else is he supposed to do? I think there's a tendency there to, you can get emotional or defensive or apologize, and or you can come up with solutions. From the piece I saw, he was trying to come up with a solution. I don't know if it'll work. I don't know if he's going to live up to it. But it was he said something. I don't think, and I didn't sense that it made the situation worse. No one said, "Oh, look at Rogan. He's not apologizing. He didn't stand by the guests. He said, "I'll have my guests and I'll have other guests." And then, is that what he said? Is that kind of what he did? Am I interpreting what I saw right?
Yeah, um he mentioned that he has like a variety of guests, and his goal and his intention on the show is to pretty much just have a discussion. And I think and this is what I like about Rogan too, is that he's very open-minded compared to a lot of other people. He's willing to like listen and to hear what people have to say. Now, granted, I think people have taken sort of his information into the extreme, believing that he's this guy who is all knowing and knows everything about, this and that, and just kind of looking at him as like, oh, sort of like a god, like if I
Yeah.
could say. But I don't think that it's to that extent. I mean, he's still human. He still makes mistakes. I think what he's trying, I think he's trying to set the right goals in terms of discussion, but how he's doing it is sort of I'm kind of blanking out here. He's not doing it in the right way exactly.
How's he not doing it the right way?
He's sort of he's saying, sorry, I'm getting
Take
really
your time. Take your time, but this helps me learn.
Yeah. He's sort of, I think that he wants to be able to talk to these people and provide his own interpretation to discussion, and a lot of his beliefs are very, very unorthodox to what
he has opinions. He's applying his opinions to these controversial guests, and it's not helping his position or his when it comes down to people receiving messages from his program. Once again, although he's number one in the world, not everybody, including myself, it's just time and everything else I got to do, are Joe Rogan followers. So what I'm getting is from social media or regular media. So I'm getting those bits, those controversial bits. They're airing those on their own programs so they can get viewers. And then they're not taking, they're taking 40 seconds, 30 seconds of an hour and a half long program. How much out of context is it? But I agree with your comment that it doesn't help. I would say exacerbates the situation when you're putting in, opinions that maybe not mainstream onto controversial guests who are certainly not mainstream, and you have so much power. You're number one, and so people are going to pay attention, hold you to a different standard. That's the way it is for being number one, right? And if you hold to a different standard, you have perhaps a different responsibility to your listenership. And the listeners have responsibility to interpret and react to what they hear if they decide to hear it. That's a good voice. That's a good quote clip.
Absolutely. And I know I heard too that one of his guests, I forgot what his name was. I guess he was banned from Twitter previously prior to the podcast.
That's the recent guy.
Yeah.
He's been controversial about vaccines or gene therapy, and they create psychosis. And if you had the vaccine after you get COVID, your side effects are worse. And he can actually say that from what I've seen, because there was one study in UK, small sample, that said some people get more fatigue and some mild things after they've had the shot. Okay, so you can say, yeah, some people have side effects. They do after they have, but it's not as if they're dying and they're not, going to the hospital. They're tired and they got a rash or something. It's a vaccine that's gone to tens of millions of people. The statistics are on his side, but that's the problem. That was the issue that kind of boiled up to Rogan, because he's had these kinds of people on several times. And it culminated with the guy who had been kicked off of Twitter for saying these series of ridiculous things. And that's what got 270 doctors to say, cut it out, which got the attention of the artists. And the artists went, aha, I don't agree with that. I'm going to talk with my music and I'm going to walk. All's fair. He just happened to, he didn't make it. I don't think he made it every episode. I'm going to be controversial about COVID and give misinformation.
Yeah, no, he talks about everything from.
He's had great guests. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he has views that are interesting, and it's not like I haven't seen the stuff. I just don't make a habit of watching it. Um, he he just didn't seem to be giving the balanced part of the COVID thing. Certainly after he got it and ivermectin and all that sort of stuff. There's science. Some people still believe in science. Science talks, and uh, that's how the scientists responded. The people who probably are better in the know than Joe Rogan.
Absolutely. And there was an article I read that was sort of going over the claims and disproving some of them. I think one of the things he said was like if you're young and you exercise and eat healthy, that you're less at risk um,
That's not true.
to receiving like the virus. Let me check again.
Yeah, that's one of them. You can eat right, exercise. That's what he said. If you do that,
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah,
less likely to get it. I don't know if he said less likely to get it or less likely to have a severe or less likely to die. I don't know if he qualified that, but it's anybody can get COVID. It doesn't make it matter who you are. All right,
yeah.
anybody can get it. It's the flu. It's a very viral, highly contagious flu that has become a political time bomb. I never thought it would happen. I'm just stunned,
Yeah.
actually.
And then he also mentioned something about the vaccine um, being gene therapy,
Yes, doesn't
even
mean
though
wrong.
even though it's been proven that it doesn't affect your genes
Nope,
at all.
nope, doesn't affect your genes. But he says it. You say that, you're lying. That's a
Yeah,
lie.
yeah,
And by saying it's not an opinion, you don't just make that. You can say, I think the vaccine gives me a third arm out on my forehead. I'm pretty sure about that. I know, I think so. In fact, I'm going to go on the air to millions of people and say, if you take the vaccine, you're going to grow a third arm out of your forehead. That's the same thing. It's a lie. And so he has a responsibility not to provide even opinionated lies. With great power comes great responsibility, right? The old Spider-Man. And so that's what he
absolutely.
has. But
Do you
everybody has responsibility along the chain.
do
Spotify has responsibility. He's got responsibility. The listeners have responsibility. And some are more important than others. Some are not more important. There's a higher degree of responsibility required at different levels.
Absolutely. Do you think that it could have also been more? I mean, granted, I'm not trying to defend him in any way of presenting this information, but do you think it could have been one of those situations more of like in the moment where he got so caught up in the conversation, he really
No, I think he's a
didn't
smart
know
guy.
much what he was saying. He was just sort of,
He's a smart guy. He knows the guests he's had on. He's been talking about COVID. He got it, and CNN and him and everybody else got this spat about his recovery. Maybe I don't know. Maybe he did. My response would be he has his guest on for a reason. He didn't have another. He picked that guest over somebody else, and I don't know. He's had Sanjay Gupta on, and he's had responsible people who were followed by people. So it's not as if he's just gone to the edges for everything he's done. Like you say, he's got a wide variety, and a wide variety of viewpoints are allowed. But when the viewpoint is just proven wrong, you get called out for it. His response as somebody as a podcast would have been, you said that, you said it before. I just don't, that's wrong. I disagree. He could have, as a podcaster, not agreed with him. He could have had him on and had the conversation. He could have been the counterpoint. He could have been the guy who said, you know what, doc, nowhere does it say this has been gene therapy. Name the person who's been affected by this because it changed their genes. Name one. He could do that. That's his responsibility if he's have a podcast, to ask the tough questions and to challenge the things spoken on this podcast. But he didn't. He agreed. He provided more opinion that exacerbated it, and that's when people went nuts. He could have a controversial guest who says crazy things. If he would have challenged it, and all fair, this wouldn't have happened.
absolutely.
In my opinion.
Now, do you think that even after this, he'll be a little more weary of what he said, or?
No, I think he'll take greater responsibility in the kind of guests he has. I don't think he'll be more. maybe he'll ask more challenging or grab. I mean, he does obviously. He gets into that dialogue, not necessarily argumentative, but he pushes back and they push it. But which one's he going to do that on? It may behoove him to, if he just wants to let the thing blow over, which is not really kind of his way, to just have non-controversial guests or guests that he can have a constructive dialogue on. But it's not going to make a difference to a number of listeners. I don't know what his listenership numbers are. I'm sure they've gone up. I would be surprised because controversy usually leads to increase. Who is this guy? Listen to him. But will he be more responsible? He says he's going to be. We'll find out in time. We will. He's not going to. He's going to be number one, and more controversies are going to come up, and he's got to respond if he wants to, and people will need to respond if they want to. That's what all it comes down to. Will he have that guest on again? I doubt it. Will he have controversial COVID guys on? Knowing Rogan or having a sense of Rogan, yeah, that'll be a stick in the eye. Yeah, I'll tell you who I can't have on my program. I'll show you guys. That might be his way, but I think he's a pretty smart guy. I think he's actually sort of a sensitive guy, and he will attempt to do the right thing or just be better at his job. It's a learning experience.
Absolutely, and
he seems like a guy who wants to get better, who wants to challenge himself to get better.
Yeah. And like you said, it all comes down to his responsibility and being able to acknowledge his mistake and just try to rectify it in the end.
Yeah, and he obviously thinks it's a mistake. He wouldn't have made the video saying, I need to get better. I need to point counterpoint guess, inclusive. So there's a realization there, and that's like in anything, the start of any process to improvement. I gotta believe any artist, any guy who's person who's number one wants to stay number one, wants to get better, improve themselves, improve their program. And he'll do that. If he doesn't, I'm sure there's people watching. And that's what would be another factor is that, if he does make a mistake, it's going to come down on him like a hammer. Look, he lied. He didn't live up to his agreement. And maybe he didn't. But there's going to be more watchdogs now on his program. And
Yeah.
maybe just to poke Spotify.
I also heard that the White House is getting involved too, in terms of the whole misinformation, trying to stop it from spreading. What sort of damage can misinformation really do?
Oh, we're seeing it. I mean, I have a whole class on it. It's a misinformation. It's back to my comment about never thought vaccine would be a controversial thing in such a wide way. I mean, people are losing their jobs because they mentioned they took the vaccine. They don't like mandates. Fine, that's a government discussion. I don't have to wear a mask forced by government. Okay, that's a government discussion. But no, I don't want to take a vaccine because why? I mean, there are certain reasons why. We all know the medical reasons. So that became politicized through misinformation, and which was already created by the polarization of our electorate and our population. Misinformation, which is actually sort of a misword, even because it sounds like just a mistake. Well, that's a mistake information. No, these aren't mistakes. None of it is intentional, because it's my point of view, or I get to have my point of view, and you can't have yours. And that is a very difficult thing to challenge and fix. In fact, I don't think it can go anywhere. I would have said, in fact, I wrote this in college, that it was going to take a global issue to make us all come together. Boy, was I wrong. We'll never come together. And the social media is the catalyst of that. In fact, it is the fluid that keeps misinformation, disinformation, division start flowing. It's allowed, when you allow people to provide comments, sometimes anonymously, on the real issues that they believe, things that they believe, without having it it is a dangerous platform. And there was a time when if people said those things, they would be punished. People who said racist things, they would be kicked out. They'd be called out. They'd be penalized. They lose their job. They're castigated. They're cast aside. Not anymore, because those issues have been allowed to rise. They have a voice. They've always been there, but now people were hiding it because they would get in trouble. Now it's like, oh, I can say it. And what's social media do to me? Call me bad names? So the answer is, I don't foresee anything that will stop the current information pollution that we have. The only thing that will help is educating students and people to be more skeptical about what they're seeing and try to find real sources of what they're taking in. Media literacy, having the skills required to make a decision if that's good information or bad information. That's probably our only vaccine against individually administered vaccine to try to solve this problem. To try to not solve it, to try to have an impact on the problem. It will never go away. As long as people have portable devices, as long as there are platforms on those portable devices that allow people to communicate anything. So I mean, it's dystopian.
And like you
I
said,
have a full line of political views on it. I won't bring it up. Go ahead.
and like you said before, with your class teaching about misinformation, I give you all the credit to that for trying to teach the next generation to sort of how to spot misinformation and how to find credible and reliable sources.
Right.
But how
There's a problem
I can
with
say
that.
this, like how with all the news and sources generated from the internet, how do we know which ones are fact from fiction?
Well, that's the next level. I don't believe your facts. I've got my own facts. You can't believe something that everybody's believed in, the Associated Press or your doctor. You can't believe them. They're just telling you what they want you to do. They're not telling you what the truth is. You want the truth? I got it right here, and you can't defend that. You got who checks the fact checkers, and the fact checkers are Pulitzer Prize winners and are seen collectively as generally reliable. Yeah, I just don't believe them. I got my facts. I don't need to believe your facts, because I got it from my barber who heard it from someplace. And I believe it. It fills it confirms my bias, right? We talk about confirmation bias. So you have a research study. I got a research study. By the way, and my research study may say exactly the same thing your research study says, but I'm going to interpret it the way I want to interpret it. Then I'm going to say the way I interpret it, and other people are going to hear that, and they're going to repeat my misinterpretation. It's like I said I'm sure I said it in your class at the beginning, maybe in my fake news class. I said you're all cheaters. I've talked to your other professors and your advisor. Every one of you is a cheater. You plagiarize. You don't deserve the grades you're getting. Prove me wrong. That's what I heard. I decided to believe it. Same thing. You think you're going to get an A in my class? Good luck. You have to prove that you're not a cheater to start with. That's what they're saying about research studies and facts. They're cheaters. They're liars. When we lose facts, we've lost it. We've lost everything. And that just cavalcades into a whole series of social, economic, political issues. We have a country based upon a belief system which believes in sort of facts at its base. We don't have facts. They're like debate. I got facts, you got facts. Let's debate it. We don't even debate anymore. My facts are right, yours are wrong. You have no right to have your facts, to believe what you believe, because I know what I believe and my facts are right. So I dismiss you and I'm going to harm you. because you're obviously with the other side, which is all wrong. How do you fight that? How do you fight that? You hope, because anyway. That's the process of education and the importance of not just formal education, but education for seniors, whatever it might be, people to understand, you can be allowed to be skeptical about things, don't be cynical about things. You have a right to respond, but you probably have some sort of responsibility to do your own research and to check it out in a responsible way.
Absolutely. And I think it's just going that extra mile of being knowledgeable about whatever subject it is and just trying to sort of go into the rabbit hole and just sort of do your own research, look at multiple sources, try to get different viewpoints from people.
Yeah, you can't be an expert on everything.
Yeah.
You hear something, you go, I need to research that. Oh, I got to research that. It's impossible. But a couple of things, you actually have a sort of a different kind of reaction, visceral or approval, whatever, confirmation, whatever. And you say, I don't know if that's true or not. Or, is that true? I'd like to know more about that. And so do that. Don't just say it, do it. Like I mean, and I get yelled at because I'm one of the guys who does, and then I'm able to talk about things, and it's like, well, you're just, you're rare. Okay, fine, because I've taken the time to know how the Supreme Court works and how many, how many white males have been on Supreme Court, 108. How many total have been? 115 in 200 years. I mean, those numbers are real. Those are facts. What does that tell you of those facts? But once again, everybody has their responsibilities. And one level of responsibility is I'm not going to take any responsibility. I'm just going to absorb and formulate opinions and talk. And you're free to do that. And all the way to the spectrum of fully responsible, whoever those people are, to say the right things, do the right things, make sure the right things get disseminated. It's up to the platforms, the people, the government, the individuals to maximize their level of responsibility when it comes down to fighting misinformation. That's a good quote.
Absolutely. And so do you think that some legal action could be taken in this case if it
No. Against Rogan? Oh, I guess somebody wants to say they listened to Rogan and they did something. I'm going to do a civil suit against them. I guess that's a hard prove.
And I know that the biggest defense would be the use of, obviously, the First Amendment of free speech.
Yeah. I mean, he's on a platform that you've paid for listening to. You're not required to do it. You have a choice. You have a choice to respond. If you respond poorly, who's responsible for that? You. Okay? But they still can try. I mean, they can sue the platform. They can sue the artist for damages. They can give it a shot. I wouldn't be surprised if Spotify doesn't have it happen several times. Bad people challenging the adult content, music, or whatever's on there. Take it off. This is hurting society. But I that would not be the first thing I think of. The penalty is the public opinion.
Absolutely. And going back to sort of Spotify's response, do you think that it's appropriate that they would at least put a warning label for any discussions of COVID-19?
Sure, but it's a hard thing to do because once again, they have a lot of sources on their platform. I am warning labels are fine. You see them on TV, you see them on cigarettes, you see them on alcohol, you see them on soda pop. It says that's fine, and people have learned to ignore them. People, if COVID's an important topic, people may be paying more attention to it now. Their health of people they love may be at stake. What else can you do? Put a wrapper on it. If people want to peel off the wrapper, that's their decision. It's got to be, once again, I take the big R word. They gotta be responsible in what tools they use to absorb these messages coming at them and how they're going to respond to them, how they're going to formulate their own opinions. Just confirming your bias, putting yourself in your bubble, poking a hole in your bubble. Everybody is different, and that is about as basic and as duh as possible. And that's how that every one of his listeners. I don't think Rogan goes out of, I don't know enough about all of his programming. He's number one. Does he go out of his way to maximize his audience? Sure. Is he a shock jock like Howard Stern was? No. He's got thoughtful authors, doctors. He has a whole variety of people. Does he have some controversial ones? Some guess he probably shouldn't have. Should he self-censor? Probably. He decides not to, you deal with it. You have to deal with the aftermath of that.
And something about this case too is that this, just in general, especially with the world of podcasts growing, this can happen to anybody.
He just happens to be number one. Is it okay if I go move to another location and plug?
Oh, yeah, of course.
I thought I'd have more battery than this, but I don't. I just did Eva on her. She's doing a story on our call I had at the foreign students, the international students.
Okay.
It's gonna be a little bit different. All right. Back.
So going back to the misinformation, despite the backlash that the mainstream media has encountered, do you think that there could be hope?
Hope for what?
For just a reformation in terms of people trying to recognize misinformation and combat it in a way.
Well, misinformation is like a virus. It can morph and change strains, and we have to be a constant battle with protecting ourselves as it moves around through age groups, through demographic groups, through different platforms. The more people who at least are aware of the fact that there's stuff that they're getting, which most people are, could be wrong, but then also take the next step to maybe check stuff that's important to them is good, and not be so culpable in the spreading by not reading that story, just seeing that the headline is something that you like and then forwarding it on. I'm gonna share that. You have a responsibility when you click the share button. That now becomes your opinion. If you don't make a comment. So there's a responsibility on people to take whatever actions they can to make sure what they're doing isn't making the problem worse. Some of that's research. The easiest one that doesn't require any time, doesn't require rabbit holes, is just don't share. Or if you do plan to share, then you better rabbit hole it. At least read the article. If you forward something in a comment that you agreed with, you're taking responsibility for that. That's a biggie. And when you got Facebook, that's Facebook. They're actually feeling the backlash. They've been feeling the pressure of some of their actions, not just misinformation, but kind of all together. So maybe that will have an impact. Facebook will sincerely try to make an effort to do something about it. Probably not. But once again, if we have personal responsibility, it's learn, research, and don't be culpable for any further spread.
Absolutely. And it's just going back to that, the willingness of being able to sort of dive into the subject and just read about it and become knowledgeable about it, and then have your own sort of opinions about it and and get the opinions of others to see what you believe is the truth.
Yeah, but that can be anxiety inducing, right? So that's why I go down to just take a second. You don't have to become an expert on the Supreme Court or COVID-19 vaccine side effects. You just have to say, you know what, this doesn't smell right. I haven't read the article. I'm just gonna let that sit. I'm not gonna forward something, you know, the top 10 reasons that, you know, alien babies were all born in New Mexico. I mean, you just don't do it. The phrase common sense rolls around and says, does common sense say, would this be something that you would say without having at a party to your friends without knowing anything about it? You just read the headline? Unless you said, I just read the headline, okay, you've qualified it. But most people, including people I know close to me, just share stuff. Well, that's the very minimal thing you can do. Is if you haven't read it or whatever, just don't. Just don't share it. Let's stop the flood, the full flood, take a few droplets of water out of it. And if enough people do that, maybe enough people get sensitive and start thinking more. And then, by the way, if they do share it, those who it's shared to, they can respond. But I've done this. People who send off fake memes, I go, this is a lie. This is wrong. You've shared something that's incorrect. It takes 20 seconds to figure that out. You should try it. I've done that. So the people who receive it, maybe they got a responsibility to push back and say, stop it. Shame them.
And do you think that could be the ultimate catalyst to sort of, as a precursor to sort of start the stopping of misinformation, just being able to call out people?
People out, ground it all on the ground. The government can't mandate it. The platforms have a reason to have it. Artists like Rogan, he wants whatever his position, he wants to stay number one. It's the people. And if we can, although we're divided because the system wants us to be divided, AI wants us to be split so it can do what it does. If we can get more momentum towards calling out the bad stuff at the personal level, maybe that will awaken some of the more flagrant sharers into not doing it quite as much. Tell the friend, that was wrong. That was incorrect information. Why did you share that? Why believe it? Well, why did you believe that? And then have the conversation if you want, but at least say, like I did, I see something I just know is wrong. I verify that I know. I verify that it's wrong before I come back and say it's wrong. And that takes 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Here's the meme. Here's your article that was that's wrong. It's meant to be misinformation. Push back. Stand up for society. Quit complaining about it and do something about it. Don't share, and those who share bad stuff, we call them out. Don't need to be mean about it. Don't need to call them bad names. Just say, what, next time we may want to be more careful and check it out before you share it. You got a lot of followers. People listen to you. You may want to make sure the stuff that you're saying is factually correct or not harmful, whatever it might be.
And also another problem I've noticed, especially with this too, is that people have a hard time being able to sort of agree to disagree. Everybody gets so, everybody just bumps heads about certain topics, and just the acknowledging that other people have different beliefs is something that I think that parts of our society greatly still struggles with.
Well, that's social media. I talked about that earlier. I got my facts, you got yours, I got my beliefs. Whatever you say, I don't care. You're wrong. You are not entitled to your beliefs because I know mine are right. I've got 7 studies here. I have 7 friends who agree. 7 of my friends agree with me, so I must be right. You must be wrong because you don't have, I don't care about your friends. You're just wrong. You can't, that is a very hard mental position to fight against. Almost impossible. Because if you don't believe facts, you don't believe. Well, but I read my. Your study's a lie. Your study's crap. My study's right. Game over.
Absolutely. And do you think that because of this whole situation with Rogan, he could be censored or no?
Censored? You have to define censor. Who's
Meaning, could some of his
sponsors leave?
yeah, could he lose some?
That's not. That's not necessarily that's a reaction to market forces and people's individual decision. Censorship, as in he gets kicked off the. Whoopi Goldberg was censored. Right? She was kicked off for 2 weeks for saying a dumb thing. Okay, did that happen to Rogan? No. Did who did it to Whoopi Goldberg? Her employer, who has a right to do what they want with their employees. Um, will the government go after Rogan? No. They may go after platforms in general about their policies, where they need to have them more front, more understandable, maybe put labels on podcasts versus regular music. They have explicit content warnings on songs, right? You're the music guy. Some songs have that's a label, right? Does that think that's voluntary? I think it's probably required. Okay, so is that censorship? Oh, that's censorship. It may make people not want to buy that one, buy the unexplicit version, or may cause people to, I want to hear what the explicit version says. So censorship's a very hard word, big word to use. And I would be cautious in my own analysis in saying you need to censor Rogan. If people want to fire him, fire him. You want to suspend him, suspend him. Does he work for Spotify? I don't think so. His content's on their platform. Could they kick him off? Yeah. But he has a right to go someplace else. He could take it off right now and say, no, it's Spotify. Don't tell me what to do with labels. I'm taking my thing over to Audio Up or whoever else. Apple. They paid him. So I mean, should there be ramifications for what he did? Sure. Has he felt them? Yeah. Are they about what his best could be done? You're in the right direction. I don't know what the best could be done. Better than nothing, I guess. Will he change? Time will tell.
And I think that's the key factor, is just time. Him being able to sort of look back at the situation, and rather than reflecting on what he did wrong, trying to focus more on what he could do right in future episodes. And I think that's a key factor. And I think it was very, very professional of him, and outright very moral of him to put out that video explaining the situation.
Yeah, so I mean, that's crisis communication. He's crisis management. They know that the cycle is going to wear down, but when you're number one, you're not going to go anywhere. People are watching. Will he be more sensitive to who he has, or more? Will he put the guest he chooses through a filter to decide what the ramifications of that guest would be? He probably will. Doesn't mean he won't have them on, but he may think about it. Well, it means he doesn't have a couple on that he probably maybe would have. We'll never really know unless he says something. So a lot of this is beyond the listener. If you want to listen or watch Rogan, you will. And if there's something that fully offends you, then you'll stop. If the misinformation on COVID, you're now immune to it because it's been going on for 2 years. Just another one. Not my favorite Rogan episode. I'll wait to see I'll see who he has tomorrow. You're not gonna punish yourself because you like what he does overall, whatever percent of the time. This is a bad one. He made a mistake. Tomorrow he's gonna have on The Rock. All right, so it'll be fun. And then you move on. Will he change? At least for a little bit, I think he'll think about it more. But how do I know? At least I would. I would be sort of devastated personally. I would take it to heart. It would mean a lot to me to know I offended people. He probably feels it too, but he's got a program to put on.
Absolutely.
Now, I'm fully in opinion mode here. I mean, it's not quotable stuff. This is just a conversation now.
It's okay. I get that. What else was I gonna say? So say that you were talking to a future podcaster with this whole situation in mind. What would you suggest for the next generation of communication? Literates, as I should
As
say.
you want to be, right? You want to be fill a market void with good quality content. If there's already people filling in that void of good quality content, make yours better, make it more interesting, make it different. But remember, you have a responsibility to your audience. You're not creating a podcast. You're communicating something to people you're never going to see. And how do you feel about that? How do you want them to react to it? And use that as your guide to the content you put on. Think about your audience always. That's where you start. I don't think anything, the quality of the podcast will be fine. The format, the question asking, whatever. But you're doing all of that. Well, you're doing it because you want to market yourself and you want to get a presence and all that sort of stuff. But really what you're doing is you're talking to people. Unknown, unfaced, wherever they may be, around the world, at any time. And you have a responsibility for that, to give them quality, good content, if that's your goal with your audience. Start. That's I told you guys in class. Think about your audience. I'm your audience. Think about me when you're writing stuff. You want to please me. You want to please your audience. You want them to come back tomorrow. You want them to come back tomorrow. And by the way, between today and tomorrow, tell 3 of their friends you like that podcast. They should listen to it too. That's what your goal is if you want to expand your podcast. And the way to do that is think about them and give them stuff that they like in a way that they want to receive it. That's the only formula.
Absolutely.
Well, everybody's have it easy because they can usually run out their name. People are trying to make themselves something. They need the edge. For that's persistence, and that's just persistence. Cream rises to the top. Okay, good stuff rises to the top. Always. It's kind of like, but it's just good guys.
Absolutely. So before we wrap up here, is there anything else you'd like to add or to say?
I don't know if it's an add or a say. I just think it's however you react to a controversy and however you've heard about the controversy, how it's being interpreted for you, you have a responsibility to react to it, respond to it, and learn about it yourself before you forward, share things that just may be incorrect and become part of the problem. Don't become part of the problem.
Absolutely. And I would definitely agree with that. And just being able to sort of, like you said, recognize that audience and sort of be aware of what you want to say to them is probably one of the most important things.
What you want to say, let me interrupt, and react. You can say anything. They're going to react to that. And that's where things can happen. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted.
Oh, no, it's okay. Yeah, just sort of reiterating what you were saying before, just um, finding that audience and realizing, and this is what I've sort of learned as a journalist too, is that not everybody's going to agree with you. One of my stories I had, I think it was one of my first ones, under the comments there was a lot of like, backlash, and just some of the comments were kind of like hateful and mean, and at first it kind of got to me because I'm like, wow, like this is my writing and it's getting kind of crapped on. But then I sort of got over the fact that, people are going to disagree with me,
Don't let it get to you.
and that's just how it is, and all I got to do is just try to be the best writer and the best reporter I can be, and to try to stick to the facts and the truth.
Yep.
And I think that should be the number one key priority for anybody going into the field of communication and journalism,
Those are
and just having that integrity.
we went through them. We went through the rules, and trust, the responsibility to society, the do no harm. Those are they've been around since the beginning of time. Bad comments are, in a world today, are expected. Negative, hateful, threatening comments. That goes back to the you can't believe that, you can't say that because I know what you should be saying. You should only say what I believe. That's what we got to burn through. You keep doing the right thing. Journalists like you coming up, doing the right thing. We have a chance. We have a chance.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
I got your letter done probably over the weekend. I'll proof it and post it. I went there. I went to the actual site yesterday. All I got to do is up a letter.
Okay.
Some of them I got to fill out characteristic surveys and additional comments. This is just up the letter, so I'll have it done